So painting mice with watercolour, I'm putting water all over the whole mouse apart from the eye. My paper is quite damp, probably actually a little bit wetter than damp. So I'm applying light to dark. I've started off with a kind of warm brown and I'm just blocking in where I see that initial tone. And as you can see, it's going on very splodgy. So it's wet in wet really, but I've got a little bit more control over it. Where I've got that veiny effect, I'm able to, with a slightly dry brush, go over it and kind of spread it out a bit more. It's not the warmest of days, so my paper is actually still quite wet. It's not dried very quickly. So I'm now going to apply the second colour, and this time it's a little bit more of a warmer brown. So I've got my normal brown and I've added a little bit of rose into there as well. The trick here is to just use little bits of colour at a time, let it sort of sink in and then add more. So as you're building up that depth of colour, but very gradually, very gently. Keep your watercolour nice and loose. I always say, plenty of water, otherwise it's like poster paint. Remember, with watercolours you work light to dark, so I've kind of put on my lighter tones. Although it's brown and brown is a dark colour, you get lighter versions of brown and darker versions of brown. So I finished with all the light areas and now I'm going to just build up the darker tones of brown. So I'm putting on black, just adding some dark Payne's grey on there now. But can you see I'm just tapping it on like in tiny little broken brush strokes. So just tapping it in. And again, the paper is still quite damp, so it will take the paint and it will continue to spread. Right, so now that my mouse is bone dry, I can apply some black and add in the eye. Don't forget the highlight as well. Leave a tiny little dot of the white paper behind and that can be a highlight. Sometimes with watercolour, as you're applying it, you think, oh, this is not really looking quite right. But when it dries, it continues, or as it dries, it continues to evolve and then it ends up looking really good. And what I've got here is just a HB pencil and I'm just going over to create some fur texture. You don't have to do this. I could have just left it as it is, but I just wanted to experiment. So even though it's bone dry, I think that there's a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of water left in places. And that's kind of allowed me to almost sort of dig out the watercolour. It's like the pencil has kind of moved some of the watercolour and pushed it apart to create that white line, which I'm not overly keen on. So I'm going to let it go even drier and then go over it with a pencil again. That is just an idea. So this is the final result. Then I've got a little mouse down here, which I worked from a real life picture. The middle mouse, I actually copied an artist version of that and it's come out a bit too cartoony for my liking. And the third one, this is where I did not use any water underneath. It was just wet on dry. Okay, so different effects for 3 different mice.